In my ongoing quest to try out various fanservice-y anime-style gacha games, I've finally come to Girls Frontline 2 EXILIUM, which I've just realized is an awful sentence. I've heard of the first game before, but I never played it since the gameplay didn't look super exciting to me. Though having played similar games since, I actually probably would have enjoyed it. I've seen some characters pop up on the internet here and there. I know there's figures of them as well, so I've been aware of the game. But since I saw that the second game is a strategy RPG or tactical RPG, I immediately wanted to give it a try. Also, I saw a clip of Nagan's baseball outfit, which was a bit of a, an additional motivation there. That plus several positive comments about Girls Frontline 2 from you guys and some of the recent videos on the channel. So what is Girls Frontline 2, or GFL2 as it's also abbreviated as? Simply put, it's a grid and turn-based tactical RPG, kind of like chess but with different maps, and you have an RPG style leveling system. That's how I like to describe these sort of things. It's available on PC, iOS, and Android. It's made by a Chinese developer, Mika Team or Mika Team, though Sunborn is another brand name they seem to call themselves as. The setting is the currently popular post-apocalyptic sci-fi sort of thing. The story is mostly serious with comedic bits here and there, with some characters being more prone to doing or saying funny things. Characters are fleshed out and so are the world's factions. It really feels like they put effort into the game world. I would say that the game offers a decent variety in terms of gameplay and game modes. The gacha elements are honestly not that intrusive. There's some beginner events that give you a couple of characters after fulfilling certain criteria, and I never felt pressured to pull for characters. The ones you get are all very serviceable. The game also has some decent fan service, which can be almost completely ignored if you're not into that. There's both skimpy and more realistic outfits you can choose from, for example. Overall, I think it's very good, though it's actually not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but we'll get to that. Let's start with the story. I haven't played the first game, and it's obvious that you're missing info if you're just jumping in like me, but that's okay. There are various characters in the story that weren't part of the first game either. They partly help with making newcomers feel more comfortable not having experienced the first game. I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what the setting and universe is all about, but from what I understand is that it takes place in the 2060s. Some sort of apocalyptic event has occurred that caused a lot of humanity to perish, leaving countries and political entities all scrambled up. Something called collapse radiation exists that can mutate animals and other fun stuff like that. That collapse radiation is also very ungood towards humans. It seems that in this game, you're somewhere in Eastern Europe. In the world of GFL, there are tactical dolls, or T-dolls, which are androids that fight in wars, presumably in place of humans, though, humans fight as well. Look at all the different groups there. They seem to be modeled after IRL guns. T-dolls act very much like humans, but they have machine bodies. Their consciousness can be backed up and transferred to a new body, so you get that whole what is it to be human thing going on. Nikkei has that sort of theme too, so you're probably familiar with the subject. Obviously, that entire theme originates from the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and, Blade Runner and that sort of thing, so not an uncommon theme anymore. You are a commander with a small unit of T-dolls. At the start of the game, you can select what gender you want the commander character to be. The game is set 10 years after the first game. You're a bounty hunter tasked to transport an item, which turns out to be a girl with some sort of powers, which you discover after being ambushed. You then end up trying to protect the girl and find out the mystery surrounding her and why people are after her. As the story progresses, you learn pretty quickly that the commander of GFL2 is the same as the one in the first game, and even though I don't know the story of the first game, bits and pieces unravel as you play in the main story. You can see the commander has a lot of connections with various people spread among multiple factions. The game world comes across as fairly detailed, and it seems to have comprehensive lore, which makes the story quite immersive. I like that there's all these groups, all with their own agenda, goals, and ideologies. It makes it feel pretty realistic. Let's take a look at the gameplay. I already mentioned it's turn and grid based. You have 4 or 5 units on the field. When you're playing story missions and stuff, it's just 4, but there's like other game modes where you'll have 1 more unit. At the start, you can select units and their positions. Depending on the map, they may be clustered together or spread apart, like their starting positions, that is. Enemies outnumber you most of the time, with the exception of some boss fights. There are 4 types of classes, though it's interesting that there are actually 7 weapon types. Basically, for the classes, you have Bulwark, Sentinel, Vanguard, and Support. Those are just fancy names for, pretty common class types. Bulwark characters are like tanks, for example. Conveniently, Support is support. But since there's a variety of weapons members of a class could use, you end up with characters that are pretty flexible in their role. An excellent example is Cheetah. You'll probably get her early on. She does a decent amount of damage, but she can buff your party, which allows her and other party members to take part in team attacks, dealing even more damage. On top of that, she heals herself or others in her vicinity after performing an action. So if she participates in multiple team attacks, she can potentially heal your entire party in a turn. Pretty good for an SR character. SR is standard in terms of rarity and how powerful they are. SSR is more better and more rare. Well, good English there. Weapons have a grade below that. I forgot what it's called. So yeah, you can get some interesting combinations going on. Of course, enemies have their own units of varying abilities. Boss fights can range from, normal-sized characters that have interesting or special abilities to giant-sized units who, all have their own little gimmick as well. You might have noticed by now that there is a cover system. There's half and full cover. Full cover blocks from head-on attacks, but the person covering can step out to attack. Half covers come in multiple flavors. Some you can jump over, others not. And there's also destructible ones. And the percentage they reduce damage by differs slightly, but it's quite logical how it works. There's actually more types of cover, like there's some that you can shoot through, but you can't go through, and the other way around as well, I'm pretty sure. Though those are a bit more rare. Characters also have a stability number, and you can see that on the very left of their name tag. So basically that provides extra protection if they are behind cover. So as you can imagine, you want to work that down. It's kind of like how a shield works, essentially, kinda. Thankfully, you can see what sort of effect your attack will have before executing it, so you can kind of plan on how you want to approach that. Also, attacks from units up high will ignore cover completely, so that's important. There's usually only one or two ways to get up, like there'll be like a ladder or a lift, but characters can jump down anywhere there isn't cover. There are map-dependent things you can interact with, like conveyor belts that move characters around, possibly even off the map and to their death, raisable and lowerable cover, lifts, and switches that control turrets, among other things. One thing to note is that after interacting with stuff, characters can still continue moving if they're not out of movement points, or whatever that's called. And they can still perform their attack actions. Speaking of actions and attacks, on top of regular attacks, characters have special attacks and abilities that they can perform. This is all very character dependent. Some of them use up bars, whatever, I'm not sure what they're called, but you can see them there. And actually, some of them don't. So I'm not sure why, but, that's how it is. My favorite at the moment is this corrosive bomb thing that Klukai can throw. It has such a large area of effect, so you can throw it deep into enemy territory, and it deals corrosion damage after each turn. And if they die, they do a little explosion, which is fun, and that deals damage to nearby enemy units. You can set off a chain reaction that's very much in your favor that way. There is an elemental system, as you may have gathered from what you just saw there. Relatively logical to figure out. You have your usual fire, water, ice, poison, electricity, and all of that. They just have different names, like burn and hydro. Though if you're a fellow Canadian, you might think of electricity first when you hear the word hydro. There's various things you can stumble upon in missions, like some enemies are camouflage and can't be attacked directly unless you're close. Some explode. Others attack you when it's not their turn. Sometimes there's reinforcements that arrive over time. Often you'll have to deal with the zones. Enemies won't attack you unless you walk into those zones or shoot at someone in the zone. There's enough variety to keep things interesting, I think. Missions have varying winning conditions. Usually you'll have to kill all the enemies. Other times you'll have to kill a specific enemy, reach certain spots on the map, or evacuate your units. Missions usually have 3 secondary goals you can accomplish in addition to the main objective. For example, like, win in less than a certain amount of turns, or have 1 or 2 or no units killed. Things like that. It's good practice to achieve these because, well, you'll get more rewards. And if you're replaying the story missions in hard mode instead of normal, you have to finish all of these objectives in order to move to the next chapter. I mean, it is hard mode, so, no playing around. If you screw up, you can rewind up to 3 times a mission. you get to decide how many turns or moves you want to undo at a time. So it's very, I guess you could even say overpowered. Certainly it keeps things from getting frustrating. You can change the game speed too. Now, I'm not sure if the game defaults to ×2 speed or if I maybe accidentally set it to that early on. But yeah, I just seem to have it at double speed. I think the animations are nice and quick when you're playing without being too fast. Like, it doesn't look terrible, and you still get to see the animations without skipping them completely. But yeah, I recorded a lot of footage at normal speed as well, just so you can see what it looks like. So if you're wondering why sometimes the animations are slower and sometimes they're quicker, that's why. Let's talk about game modes and the leveling system. You can level up characters and weapons. Weapons also have attachments which change stats. There's separate experience points for characters and weapons. You have to manually level them up. For the first several chapters, it's not really much of a problem, as long as you focus your attention on, just 4 or 5 characters. Once you get to maybe chapter 7 or 8, perhaps, or you start leveling up more than 5 characters and weapons, you'll run out of experience. You'll have to do supply missions in order to get more experience. Thankfully, the game will tell you exactly how to acquire materials if you're running low. Plus, if you've done the supply missions before, you can auto-fight to make it all faster. Doing those sort of missions will consume, I don't know what they're called. It's like these little bluish rock thingies. But I don't know, I've never run out of them. There are other materials that also unlock points on a skill tree-like thing, though it's more like a skill line. I'm sure there's an actual name for this. You can also unlock abilities. You have ability slots where you can switch them around. If you get duplicates when pulling for characters, you can use them to enhance your characters. Same with guns. So it's like, getting spare bodies or duplicate characters in Nikkei, for example. The gacha system is pretty standard. If you've played other notable games of the genre, you kind of know what to expect. The good thing is the game's pretty enjoyable without having to spend money. The animations with the helicopter and you having to open the door is actually kind of fun. It's also short, so it doesn't get too annoying after seeing it a couple of times in a row. Though you can, of course, skip that stuff. Well, you can get a bunch of characters without paying. Most outfits you have to pay for, though. There's some rookie events, which I mentioned before. And yeah, those allow you to get some characters and outfits, which is nice. So at least you get something without spending any money. There's a good amount of variety in game modes. Some even offer alternative types of gameplay. Like there's one that's actually just a Nikkei clone. There's another one where you explore grid or tile-based floors and fight when you stumble upon enemies, with a boss to defeat at the final floor. I'm sure there's like a name for this kind of genre, but I don't know. Recently, I even stumbled upon a more real-time based game mode where you have to run and collect items and shoot enemies. If they catch your field of view, it turns into a normal turn-based fight, and all of that you have to complete within a specified time. So yeah, it seems like there's a decent amount of things to do, and I appreciate the experimentation with the genres. I spent most of my time playing on PC, but I've always played a bit on my tablet, which is a Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 Plus. Runs pretty well. I can excuse the lack of graphical fidelity compared to PC. I don't like playing games without controllers or mouse and keyboard, but the tactical nature of the gameplay means it's actually really easy to play on a touchscreen. I'll never play something like Zenless on a touchscreen ever though. But with games like GFL2, it works great. And the game loads up super quick no matter what I play it on. Loading up Nikkei on my phone takes so long, you're already done having a poo before I reach the main menu. While with GFL2, I'm already playing a mission. There's also some dating sim-like aspects. I'll be honest, despite my track record with this channel, I actually haven't really touched these gameplay mechanics yet. I've been playing almost daily for months, and admittedly, sometimes only just for half an hour. Despite that, the affection mechanics aren't something I have any experience with. I know it's a bit strange. To be fair, I'm also playing ZZZ and Nikkei, so I'm probably just getting my fix from those games. From what I gather, the girls can get the expected stat boosts, and they can also give you items, I think. You can dispatch units too in order to get resources. It takes a certain amount of real-time minutes. Essentially, it's passive resource gathering that you see often in gacha games. There is a dormitory area. The girls lounge around here. You can change your outfits if you have them unlocked and or you bought them. I have a feeling that if this was, let's say, a Senran Kagura game, you most likely would be able to do more interesting things here. But still, I mean, it's not bad. There's a few poses or activities they do, and you can move the camera around. It is worth mentioning that it does say that it's a beta, so it seems like this is an area they want to expand on, which would be nice. Seems that there's some good potential here for good fan service. Also, in the refitting room where you can change equipment and level up characters, there's a showcase mode. I don't know what it's called, but you can look around the character and stuff. And when you click on various places, they have some reactions. In terms of the overall gameplay, having played Disgaea, Valkyria Chronicles, Fire Emblem, and various games like that, the biggest criticism I have is that the missions are too short and a bit easy. There's a lot of different gameplay mechanics, so it would be nice if missions were made longer or larger or both to give you a more challenging experience where you really have to, exploit all these game mechanics and do all of these things. Usually you're done after a few turns, so, maybe missions take at max 10 minutes, but usually it's more like 3 or 5. There's a lot of missions you can play, plus a higher difficulty level that you can also choose for the main story, but I'd wish the missions were designed in a way that you'd have to think more about character deployment, what abilities to use, and how to take advantage of the map and its terrain. It's still very fun, it's just, that's just kind of what I'm looking for after having played those games. By the way, just because I mentioned Valkyria Chronicles, I just find it funny that GFL2 lifted something straight from Valkyria Chronicles, and those are the sight lines. So when units see each other, there's like red lines and the, yellow lines, that sort of thing. The red lines are, within attack range, that sort of thing. So they obviously looked at all that stuff when they were designing this game. The game is pretty good looking, though the post-apocalyptic aesthetic, that's not particularly original. Nikke and Snowbreak have a similar overall art style. The characters look good. The game world looks like it's supposed to. Animations aren't like super amazing. They're adequate. It's not at the level of Zenless. Special attacks and abilities often take place in the void, as I like to call it. It's just like a gray background. But for some reason you really notice that it takes place in its own little gray space of boringness. It reminds me of the David Mitchell gray tie analogy in Would I Lie to You? It's so gray that it draws the eye. If it was just, let's say, color-coded to match the characters or maybe the map, then, the map that you're playing on, then I think that would be a big improvement. It wouldn't look so boring, I guess. While the maps are usually dark and moody looking, they do have a decent amount of variation. They're all distinct places which you can place in the game world. The character models look good. This is particularly highlighted in special attacks as well as in dormitory scenes. I think the menus look pretty decent and work well. They're fast and snappy and no issues transitioning between the mouse and the touchscreen either. I realize I haven't played this game on a phone, so I don't know how it translates in terms of legibility or the size of buttons. If you've played this game on a phone and you have sausage fingers, let me know how that's working out for you. Also, I just want to also mention, since I brought up menus, that sometimes I just don't know where certain game modes are. Like they'll have all of these kind of generic names and it's like, oh, well, I don't know how to get to that Nikke clone, for example. It's like I would have to just dig around. But at the same time, somewhat recently, they actually did an update. So there's like a spot where you can do like, daily quests or whatever. And it kind of tells you, hey, this is stuff that resets every now and then. And you can, play that game mode and stuff. So hopefully they can improve on that. I don't know, maybe it's just me. In terms of sound, I think everything's pretty standard. I'm not an expert when it comes to gun sounds, but they do have a satisfying sound to them. You can also differentiate between the types of weapons. That's both on PC with a proper sound system and even just on a regular tablet. The music suits the post-apocalyptic setting. Nothing too standout, but nothing to complain about either. I like the menu sounds, actually. For some reason, it's just kind of... I just like the noises when you press buttons and stuff. In terms of language, you can choose Japanese voices like I have done, or you could go Chinese or Korean if you prefer. So that's Girls Frontline 2 EXILIUM. I find the story and setting very interesting, even if it isn't particularly original these days. But then again, fantasy games aren't either, are they? Gameplay is pretty fun with lots of characters and abilities, and a decent amount of map and enemy variations. Though I do wish there were longer missions which would force you to utilize more of the gameplay functions per mission. Bigger maps and more deployable units per map would be nice too. Or how about changing secondary objectives to something more compelling? Instead of just finishing the mission in a certain amount of turns or not losing a certain amount of units, Why not make it more replayable by giving you objectives such as limiting the amount of units further or trying to finish the mission with only certain types of classes? That would make things more challenging and force you to rethink your strategy, making it less about just brute forcing it every time you play a mission. Because when you do a mission, a lot of times you just sweep the entire thing and it's like, yep, no reason to replay that ever again. The fan service is pretty decent. There's a nice variety of character types as well, a couple of outfits, which most you have to buy. But I do hope they'll expand on the Dormitory game mode. There's potential there, and the fact it says beta is a good sign for some future developments. So I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think of the game if you've played it. Remember, you can watch videos early and get updates on what I'm working on if you're a Patreon supporter or a YouTube channel member. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.